our first interview, that may have been 30 years ago. So one more movie. One more movie.
He'll do it.
What if the greatest Hollywood love story never actually happened? No scandal. No tabloid headlines. Just two souls, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, caught in a decades-long dance of almost. They never dated. They never kissed off camera. And yet, their bond was deeper than most marriages. Behind the scenes of Titanic, something unspoken began. Something neither fame nor time could break. For years, fans of Titanic have wondered if the undeniable connection between Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet extended beyond the silver screen. They speculated, analyzed red carpet interactions, and clung to behind-the-scenes moments, convinced it was more than just friendship between the actors who brought Jack and Rose to life. Now, after decades of silence, DiCaprio has finally opened up about the one true fans always suspected. And it's both beautiful and heartbreaking. It all began in 1996, during the casting of James Cameron's Titanic. Two rising stars, young and talented, were chosen to portray a love story that would define a generation. From the start, the chemistry between them was unmistakable, not just as their characters, but as themselves. It wasn't long before their connection transcended the script. On set, they weren't just colleagues. They became fast friends, bonded by humor, trust, and a shared experience that would shape their careers forever. Kate has often recalled how Leo made her laugh like no one else could. She felt instantly at ease around him, a rare feeling in an industry driven by image and performance. Leo echoed this sentiment in interviews, saying working with Kate never felt like work. It felt like something effortless, real. Though they were just kids, their bond was immediate and deep. They understood each other, anticipated each other's thoughts, and found comfort in each other's presence in a way that wasn't romantic, but something equally intimate and powerful. Off-screen, their friendship continued to flourish. While most actors drift apart once filming ends, Leo and Kate didn't. They stayed in touch, supported each other's projects, and even took vacations together. And yet, despite this closeness, they never dated. While the world speculated, whispering about the palpable chemistry they couldn't quite explain, the two insisted they were just friends. But those closest to them, crew members, insiders, felt something deeper, something unspoken, a kind of tension that wasn't uncomfortable, but charged with what-ifs. For years, the timing was never right. Life kept intervening. Kate married in 2003. Leo remained famously non-committal, drifting from one high-profile relationship to the next, never settling down. But through career milestones and personal heartbreaks, they remained each other's constants. Kate was there when Leo finally won his long-overdue Oscar. Leo was present when Kate faced the heartbreak of divorce. They weren't lovers, but they were always there, rooted in a bond that outlasted many marriages. What they shared wasn't something they could risk. They both seemed to know that crossing that line might destroy the one relationship that had remained untouched by fame, pressure, and time. Kate once said they needed each other too much to risk losing it. Leo echoed that sentiment, calling her his closest friend in the industry. But beneath their public declarations of platonic love, there were glimpses of something more, moments when they looked at each other a beat too long, sat too close, whispered things the cameras never caught. Still, fear held them back. For Leo, the idea of commitment was daunting. For Kate, it was about building something lasting, something stable. She pursued marriage and family, while Leo pursued freedom and fleeting romances. They lived different lives, walked separate paths, but always found their way back to each other. Through every twist of fate, they remained tethered, close, but never quite close enough. And then, decades later, in a rare and vulnerable moment, Leonardo DiCaprio finally admitted what fans had long suspected. It wasn't part of a press tour. There were no flashing lights, no grand stage. Just a quiet interview, a simple question. Did he regret never settling down, never marrying? His answer stopped everyone cold. He said her name. Kate, he whispered. She was the love I couldn't have. In that one moment, everything changed. All the theories, rumors, and fan hopes felt validated. He explained that they were always there for each other, but the timing was never right. And maybe, just maybe, he was too afraid to ruin what they had. He said he didn't want to lose her, the one person who knew him before the fame, who never asked him to be anything but himself. With Kate, he said he never had to pretend. He spoke of how no one else had ever seen him the way she did. That with her, he felt like the man he used to be, and that no one had ever come close to the depth of connection he had with her. When asked if he ever wondered what might have been, he looked down and quietly replied, "Every day." Kate's response was equally poignant. When she was asked about Leo's confession, she didn't dismiss it or deflect. She closed her eyes and paused, clearly emotional. "I always knew," she said, her voice cracking. She explained that Leo was one of the few parts of her life that had remained untouched by the chaos of celebrity. Being with him, she said, brought her back to a version of herself she missed, her younger self, unjaded and unguarded. She revealed that there were quiet moments behind closed doors when she wondered what might happen if they just said the words out loud, if they took the leap. But like Leo, she was afraid of what they might lose, afraid to break something so pure. She admitted that they were never ready at the same time. When she was open, Leo wasn't, and when he was finally ready, she had already moved on. And yet, the love was real. When asked directly if she loved him, truly loved him, her answer was soft, almost a whisper. "I did," she said. "I do, but life got in the way." Their performance in Revolutionary Road, a film that reunited them as a troubled married couple, took on new meaning in hindsight. In one emotional scene, Kate breaks down crying in Leo's arms. The scene was done in a single take, no cuts. Kate later admitted the tears were real. The moment had touched something deep inside her. It reminded her of what they never had and never would. "It broke something open in me," she said, "and I don't think I've ever closed it again." They called each other best friends for decades. And maybe that was true, but it was also something more, something that never quite fit into neat labels. They weren't just co-stars, and they weren't just friends. They were a love story that hovered on the edge, always waiting, never quite arriving. And maybe that's what made it so tragic, because they didn't fall out of love. They just never allowed themselves to fall all the way in. Now, with Kate divorced and Leo unattached, fans are asking the question no one dared to voice before. Could it still happen? Could they finally be ready? Or has that moment passed for good? They've spent a lifetime circling each other, always close, never committed. And yet, neither's found a connection that rivals the one they've always shared. Leonardo DiCaprio has spent much of his adult life avoiding commitment. His relationships were fleeting, glamorous, and short-lived. The media chronicled his every date, but none of them ever lasted. Kate, on the other hand, chased permanence. She married, had children, experienced heartbreak. But through it all, she always had Leo. And he had her. They were each other's constant in a world that rarely offers such things. In Hollywood, where friendships fade and fame corrodes authenticity, Leo and Kate were each other's safe space. They survived the storms of life, career highs and lows, personal losses, changing times. And through it all, their connection endured. It's an open secret in the industry, something whispered but never acknowledged. They were always supposed to end up together, but fate had other plans. They never betrayed their partners. They never crossed a line. But maybe they also never gave themselves a chance to see what could have been. Maybe they protected their friendship so fiercely that they missed the one thing that might have made both their lives whole. In one of his more introspective interviews, Leo admitted he doesn't like to look back, but when Kate's name came up, he paused. "That's the one thing I think about more than I should," he said. What makes Leo and Kate's story so captivating isn't just the star-studded setting or the legendary movie that birthed their connection. It's the absence of a traditional love arc. In a world addicted to fairy tale endings, their story is filled with silence, missed chances, and unspoken words. And yet, it remains unforgettable. What they had, and still have, defies categories. It was never about public declarations or grand gestures. It was about presence. A consistent, quiet loyalty. The kind that doesn't fade with time or distance. Behind the headlines and glossy photographs was a reality both simpler and more complicated. Leo and Kate have been described by those close to them as soul mirrors, people who reflected back to each other their truest selves, even when they were unsure of who that was. Fame has a way of distorting identity. You're celebrated for roles, appearances, and perceptions rather than who you actually are. But from the start, Leo and Kate never needed masks around each other. They met before the Academy Awards, before the global fame, before the pressure to fit personas. They met as artists, as friends, as young people trying to navigate something massive. That's what made it so rare. And maybe that's why they protected it so fiercely. They saw each other at their most vulnerable. Not just during Titanic, which was an emotionally grueling and physically intense shoot, but in the years that followed. Kate has spoken about feeling deeply self-conscious during filming. About her body, about fame, about being taken seriously as an actress. Leo, with his boyish charm and playful energy, helped her shed those insecurities. Even just for a moment, he treated her as an equal when few others in the industry did. She, in return, offered him a grounding presence, a kind of emotional depth he wasn't used to from the whirlwind of attention that surrounded him. Throughout their respective careers, they were often asked about each other. Reporters tried to bait them into revealing more, and while their answers remained respectful and consistent, "We're just best friends," there was always a flicker, a pause, a softness in her eyes that hinted at more. Not scandal, not secrecy, just a kind of reverence, as if their story was too sacred for the public. And perhaps that's the heart of it, reverence. They didn't just like each other. They respected each other deeply, not just for their talents, but for who they were as people. They grew together, matured together. They comforted one another after heartbreaks, stood by each other through tragedies, and championed one another's artistic risks. Kate once called Leo her rock. Leo once said Kate was the only person who never treated me like someone I wasn't. Yet even in the most trusted of spaces, the fear remained. If we take this further, do we lose everything? They both admitted, in separate interviews years apart, that there were moments when the possibility crossed their minds. Private times, away from cameras and chaos, when they looked at each other and wondered, could this be more? But always, the question was followed by another. And if it goes wrong, what happens to us? Because what they had was rare, and rare things are fragile. The real tragedy isn't that they never fell in love. It's that they never let themselves. They stood on the edge of something extraordinary for decades, holding hands but never leaping. Maybe that's what makes their story so human. We all know what it's like to be almost in love, to wonder about a person who always felt like home. We've all been haunted by the what-ifs. Their story, though untold in romantic terms, is layered with emotional intimacy. During the filming of Revolutionary Road, Kate was married to Sam Mendes, the film's director. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Playing a crumbling couple in front of your spouse while your heart still beats a little differently next to your co-star. The emotional toll was immense. Kate later admitted that filming those scenes with Leo, pretending to unravel a marriage while channeling very real and raw emotions, was the most emotionally exhausting work she had ever done. Some said she wasn't just acting. She was finally releasing the decades of bottled-up emotion she had buried beneath years of just friends. That movie marked a turning point, not in their relationship status, but in the emotional undercurrents between them. It forced both of them to confront a reality they had been sidestepping. It was as though the universe gave them one final canvas, one last shot to portray what they might have been if life had aligned differently. What unfolded on screen was devastating, not just because of the story, but because it was a performance built on the truth they never spoke. After that film, something shifted. They appeared less in public together, gave fewer joint interviews, and began to speak about each other in past tense, even though the bond never truly ended. Maybe the emotional weight became too heavy. Maybe the timing felt like it had truly passed. Or maybe, like many of us, they were simply tired of hoping for something they never believed they deserved. But even in their physical distance, the emotional connection never frayed. In private, they were still each other's first calls. When Kate lost her father, Leo sent flowers and quietly flew in for the service. When Leo went through intense periods of media scrutiny or personal doubt, Kate was always one of the few voices he still listened to. They didn't flaunt their closeness. They just lived it. This is what people rarely talk about when they discuss love. Love isn't always fireworks or grand confessions. Sometimes it's long phone calls at 2 a.m., the way someone remembers your laugh, the silence that feels comforting instead of awkward. Love is knowing someone would drop everything for you. Not because they have to, but because they want to, and perhaps that's why fans still root for them. Not because of nostalgia, but because we saw a version of love that didn't rely on physicality or public displays. We saw devotion, endurance, respect, a connection that time couldn't touch. And we wonder, what if, now, years later, with life slower and quieter, with youth behind them and wisdom on their faces, the question lingers again. Could it still happen? They're no longer the rising stars. They're seasoned, scarred, and searching. The stage is set. The obstacles that once stood between them, relationships, ambition, uncertainty, have faded. The bond is still there. The world is still watching. But maybe the most powerful part of the story is that it doesn't have a perfect ending. Maybe it's meant to stay open-ended, a living example that some love stories aren't meant to be finished. They're meant to echo. We may never see a wedding announcement or a red carpet kiss, but we've seen something arguably more important. Two people who have spent their lives holding each other's hearts gently, respectfully, and without demand. And in a world that often treats love as disposable, that is perhaps the rarest thing of all, because love, real love, isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about protection. Sometimes it's about being the safe harbor someone returns to year after year, through storm after storm. And sometimes it's about choosing not to act, not because the feelings aren't there, but because the friendship is too precious to lose. So here they are, two people who could have been, maybe still could be, but who were always something more than friends, even if they never had the courage to call it love. And perhaps the most haunting, beautiful truth of their story is this. They didn't end up together, but they never truly parted either. Their story isn't about passion or scandal. It's about timing, fear, loyalty, and love. Quiet, enduring love that outlasts the noise of celebrity and the chaos of life. They loved each other. They still do, but the world got in the way. The timing never lined up. And maybe the saddest truth is not that they never got together, but that they still could and haven't. In a world obsessed with happy endings, Leo and Kate gave us something far more real. An enduring connection that didn't need romance to be unforgettable. Their story isn't about what was, but what almost was, a friendship forged in fire, sealed by silence, and carried across decades with unwavering loyalty. Maybe that's why it still haunts us, because deep down, we've all had a Leo or a Kate in our lives. Someone who slipped through the cracks, yet never left our hearts. If this story moved you, drop a comment and share your what if. And if you're craving more untold truths behind Hollywood's biggest stars, hit subscribe. There's so much more coming.